The Sikh is Chelek Chaf Aleph, Mishpatim Beis, Lili Nishmis Rabbi Yosef Binyamin Ben Reb Menashe Kaltman, a classic Rashi Sikha, which actually the Rebbe in the Farbrengen connects with the Geula, because this is talking about going to Eretz Yisrael, and certainly some of this information is relevant not just to the first entry of the Yidden into Eretz Yisrael, but also to that which b'mheira v'yameinu we will be going into Eretz Yisrael with the Geula ha'amitis v'hashlema. In pasuk hineni sheleach anochi sheleach malach lefanecha. In Parshas Mishpatim, the Eibishter says, "I behold, I'm going to send an angel before you, who is going to lead you into Eretz Yisrael, v'lahaviacha, to bring you el hamokim, to the place asher hachinoisi, which I prepared." Asher is Rashi Mefarish. Rashi says Asher Achinoisi, quotes the words Asher Achinoisi from the pasuk, and explains Asher Zimanti Laseis Lachem, which I set aside, which I designated to give to you. Und danach bringt Rashi a zweiten Pirush. Then Rashi brings a second explanation, Kidulakamon Siv Beis, which will be explored in Siv Beis. The second explanation that Rashi brings is that the Eibishter prepared himself a place in Shamayim, in heaven, aligned with the place of the Beis Hamikdash below. So even though the first pshat Achinoisi means Eretz Yisrael, the second pshat Achinoisi means Hashem prepared something for himself in connection with the Beis Hamikdash. Mefarshim learn, the Mefarshim teach, what is it that's bothering Rashi here that he has to give this explanation? As Rashi Bavar and Dar, Rashi is addressing the following question. In Pasuk Shteit Asher Achinoisi Stam, the Pasuk says that I have prepared without saying for whom the Eibishter prepared this place. Rashi Mefarish as the Achinoisi is Laseis Lachem. And Rashi explains, who did Hashem prepare this for? Lachem, for you. Simple as that. And if, following this reasoning, if you're going to wonder in that case, why does Rashi bring a second explanation? In the brackets, according to this explanation, it might leave a question. Why doesn't the pasuk spell it out? Why does the pasuk leave it empty, Asher Hachinoisi, without saying for whom? Bringt the Rashi zweiten Pirush. Therefore, Rashi brings a second explanation. As Asher Achinoisi meant kvar mekoymi nikar kenegdoi, that Achinoisi means I prepared my space, that it should be aligned with the Beis Hamikdash below. And Rashi continues, Beis Hamikdash shel ma'ala mechuven keneged Beis Hamikdash shel mata kedul kamansiv beis, that the Beis Hamikdash of above is aligned to the Beis Hamikdash of below, as we will elaborate on this in the second seif. According to that explanation, the second explanation of Rashi, Hachinoisi means for himself, for the Eibishter. As if it would have said that I have prepared for myself, I'm bringing you to the place that I have prepared for myself, which means I prepared something for myself that is connected to the place that I'm bringing you to. And in that case, it does not need to say explicitly for whom. Because if a person is preparing something, unless you say that it's for someone else, clearly it's for themselves. So Rashi brings a second pirush to answer the question, why doesn't it say that he prepared it for the Yidden, with the answer being that he prepared it for himself. So this is the pirush of the Mefarshim. What is bothering Rashi? What is bothering Rashi is what's bothering Rashi is for whom is the Eibishter preparing this space? And Rashi answers lachem, for you, for the Yidden. But if you're going to ask, why doesn't the pasuk say so explicitly? I'll bring you a second pirush that it means that the Eibishter was preparing something for himself. That's the pirush of the Mefarshim, which the Rebbe is going to ask on now and refute. Der Pirush is aber nicht verstandig. This explanation is not understood. Weil Aleph, number one, in derech Pshat is melachatchila nit kein kasha, was der pasuk zog da achinoisi stam. According to Pshat, there's no question why the pasuk doesn't say for whom. Was is moving may love. It's self-understood. As der achinoisi is for Yidden, wegen wem es redt sich in pasuk that the Eibishter prepared it for the Yidden, about whom he's speaking about in the pasuk. I'm sending you a malach. I'm bringing you to the place that I've prepared. He's talking to the Yidden. Clearly, he prepared it for them. It's if you look at the pasuk, you'll understand it by yourself. In Pshat, there's no question why the pasuk doesn't say for whom, because the pasuk is self-understood. And therefore, if Rashi brings an explanation, It must be that something else is bothering him. Based, another question that we have on the way the Mefarshim learn Rashi. Lefiza at Rashi gedav zogen bekitzer. Al derech v'delashon von Eben Ezra da, asher achinoisi lachem. If the only thing that's bothering Rashi is for whom is the Eibishter preparing this space, then just say lachem. Quote the words asher achinoisi that I have prepared, and write in the Pirush lachem for you. And that's how the Eben Ezra actually does it, very concisely. Farvas is Rashi, Aleph, Mayrich bilishoynei asher zimanti loses lachem. Why does Rashi elaborate to add the words that I have designated to give, and not just say the word to you? Unachmer beis, and a secondary issue here, it is a second issue. It is mishana from lashna pasuk achinoisi unutztem vart zimanti. Rashi changes. Instead of saying that using the word hachinoisi, which is the word the pasuk uses, Rashi instead changes the word to zimanti. So if Rashi was just bothered by for whom is the Eibishter preparing the space, he could have just said the word lachem. That would have answered that question. From the fact that number one, Rashi says anything, and the fact that he says it with all the words asher zimanti losis lachem, and the fact that he uses the word zimanti instead of hachinoisi, clearly there's something more to Rashi here that we have to uncover. Seif beis. The noch is Rashi mamshich zeu pshutay. That is the first pshat, which is the pashut pshat, the simple pshat. Umedrashi, but there's also a medrash. And Rashi again quotes the words El habokim asher hachinoisi from the pasuk. Kvar mekoimi nikir kenegdoi. My place is already recognized opposite or aligned with the Beis Hamikdash. Rashi continues, this is one of the psukim that tell us that the Beis Hamikdash of above is aligned with the Beis Hamikdash of below. So just to give an example, they're mentioned in Ha'ara later on, in Parshas Vayetze, when Yaakov Avinu rests for the night and wakes up in the morning, and he sees that this is a holy place, he says, Ein Zakim Beis Elokim, V'zeh Shar HaShamayim. This is the house of God, and this is the gateway to heaven. So Rashi says, the Pashut Pshat is that the tefillos, the davening, the prayers of people go up through this space, which is why it's called Shar HaShamayim. Then Rashi says, Umedrashay. The Medrash is Shebeis Hamikdash Shel Maila Mechuvan Keneg Beis Hamikdash Shel Mata. This is Shar HaShamayim. This is the place where the Beis Hamikdash, Yaakov was on Har HaMoriah, on the place where the Beis Hamikdash was going to be built, and right above us is the Eibishter's Beis Hamikdash, because the Beis Hamikdash of above is aligned to the Beis Hamikdash below. Another example is in Parshas B'Shalach in the Shira of Az Yashir. It says, Mochaim l'shiftecha pa'alta Hashem, you made a place for your dwelling. So Rashi says, Migdash shel Mata mechuvan keneged kisei shel Maila. This place, this har that I'm going to bring you on, is Mochaim l'shiftecha, is aligned with your seat above, Asher pa'alta, which you have made. So these are two examples. I think there's one other one. These are two examples where the pasuk, where we see a pasuk telling us that the Beis Hamikdash shel Mata, the Beis Hamikdash shel Maila, the Beis Hamikdash of above, is aligned to the Beis Hamikdash of below. And this is, it says Rashi, here's another one. When he says, Al Mokim Asher Achinoisi, the Mokim that we're referring to is the Mokim of the Beis Hamikdash, Asher Achinoisi, I prepared for myself a space that is directly aligned with the space of the Beis Hamikdash below. The first thing, before Rashi asks his questions, Rashi first addresses, before the Rebbe asks the question, the Rebbe addresses one nekuda, and that is the fact that Rashi repeats the words El Hamakim Asher Achinoisi. The Dibur Hamaschil is Asher Achinoisi, and then when the Rashi brings the Medrash, he says Umedrashay El Hamakim Asher Achinoisi again. So Rashi, first the Rebbe addresses that. The time for us Rashi is Nachum Almighty Divrei Lamakim Asher Achinoisi in the second Pirush. The fact that Rashi quotes these words once again in the second Pirush, as Muvan is understood. Leramis, this is to indicate as late Midrasha is Gelati Ker Pshat Halashon. According to the Medrash, the wording of the pasuk is smoother. Was the pasuk sagt El Hamokim, nit El Haaretz. The pasuk says we're talking about going to Eretz Yisrael, and the pasuk uses the word El Hamokim to the place, and not El Haaretz to the land. So according to the second Pirush, it makes perfect sense. Weil der Achinoisi batzit sich nicht zu Eretz Yisrael, nor zu Mokim HaMikdash, because the Achinoisi in the second Pirush of Rashi is referring not to the whole land of Eretz Yisrael, but specifically to the place where the Beis HaMikdash is going to be, and therefore it says El HaMokim. So that's why Rashi says again, El HaMokim Asher Achinoisi. The fact that it says Mokim is because it's referring specifically to a certain Mokim within Eretz Yisrael. And if you're going to ask in that case, if you're following this reasoning that the Pshat is better in the second Pirush, where you know that Rashi always whatever is more consistent with Pshutei Shel Mikra always goes first. So in that case, why does Rashi put this Pshat second? This is not a compelling question over the first pshat. We do find in other places that you could refer to the whole land as makim. Makim means a place. So a place could be a local, specific, very localized space within a broader land or a country. But a land is also a makim. And we find other psukim where the word makim is used to mean a land. The adarabah, and quite the contrary. Von hemshich ha'inyan da is l'cheire muchrich as v'la'aviacha el ha'makim v'gemer retzich nit wegen ha'makim mesuyim in Eretz Yisrael nor wegen Eretz Yisrael b'chlal. From the context of the pasuk, where it sounds more like we're talking about Eretz Yisrael and not about a specific space within Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, that is not enough of a question for Rashi to have put this second Pirush first. But nevertheless, it's still, once you're bringing in the second Pirush for a different reason, which we will explain later in the Sikha, it's Gishmak that the word El HaMokim fits in even better. Nevertheless, since, according to the Medrash, the meaning of the word El HaMakim changes from being the Eretz Yisrael to this specific place. Also, the term Asher Achinoisi fits better. Kidul Kamon, as we will explain in the Sikha later on. And therefore Rashi quotes these words when he brings the Medrash, because once I have to bring you the second Pirush for another reason, which will be explained later in the Sikha, I want to bring these words, El HaMakim, to show that El HaMakim means something different according to this Pshat, and actually it fits in nicer in a way into the words. Okay, so this was a side, if you will, a side nakuda, a side point that touches upon explains why Rashi brings in again the words El HaMakim Asher Achinoisi. But now let's go back to the actual Pirush. The actual Pirush is that the Eibusher prepared a place for himself opposite or aligned with the Beis HaMikdash, and this is one of the places in one of the psukim in Chumash that tells us that the Beis HaMikdash of above is aligned to the Beis HaMikdash of below. However, we have a question on Rashi. But Rashi is the Meisif Nachaninian, the fact that Rashi adds this second thing. That this is one of the psukim that teach us that the Beis HaMikdash of above is aligned with the Beis HaMikdash of below. To tell me that this is the fact, that the Beis Mikdash of above is aligned to the Beis Mikdash of below, I understand. That's the meaning of the word Asher Achinoisi. Words Asher Achinoisi according to this pshat. But why is it necessary to tell me that there are other psukim like this? Why do I need to know here that there are other psukim in the Torah that give me the same piece of information? And you can't answer. You can't explain that the reason why Rashi does this is because he's concerned that the Ben Chamesh Lemikra, the simpleton who is learning this for the first time, is going to wonder, what does it mean, the Beis Mikdash of above, Beis Mikdash below? It doesn't seem realistic. And therefore, to say that, despite the fact that it seems a little bit fantastic, nevertheless, this is the fact, and the proof is that there are other psukim that discuss the same thing. Maybe that's why Rashi is bringing this. We can't say that. We can't say that Rashi is doing this in order to reinforce the faith of the Ben Chamesh in this concept. Weil Rashi hat schon früher zweimal gebracht the minion, because Rashi already brought this twice, prior to this parsha. As Beis Hamikdash of Ma'alim Mechubim Keneged Beis Hamikdash of Mata, the Beis Hamikdash of above is aligned to the Beis Hamikdash of below. Rashi nit meisif di verte di raya v'ze'echad min ha'mikroi shemim. Rashi in those places does not add these words that are supposedly a proof to the truth of this. So if Rashi was concerned that the faith or the understanding of the child is not intact, then he should have introduced this concept right in the beginning. The very first time that Rashi said it, he should have said, by the way, there are other psukim that do the same thing. And that would strengthen the faith of the child. From the fact that Rashi doesn't do that means that Rashi is not concerned about the fact that the child is not going to believe it. If he brings these words, this idea, it's obviously because it's adding something to the understanding of the Pirush. The question is what? What do these words add? Gimel, in Sif Gimel, we're going to ask another two diyukim nuances in Rashi. In other words, in addition to understanding the general Rashi, that half of the second Pirush seems to be totally superfluous. In addition to that, if we look at the words that Rashi chooses, it's going to raise two questions. Aleph, the makar from the Rashi is in Tanchuma. The makar, the source of this second Pirush of the Medrash, is in the Medrash Tanchuma. Over Dart is the lashon, but over there the lashon, the wording used is a drop different. This is one of the psukim, hamachavros or hamachaveres, that clarify. The Beis Mikdash of below is aligned with the Beis Mikdash of above. What do you see over here, especially from the words that are highlighted? That the Beis Mikdash Shalamata, the Beis Mikdash of below is mentioned first, and the Beis Mikdash Shalamayla is mentioned second. If you look at Rashi, Rashi does the opposite. He says first the Beis Mikdash Shalamayla, and second the Beis Mikdash Shalamata. So the question is, why does Rashi change the order? Saying first the Beis Mikdash of Maila, the Beis Mikdash of above, and the Beis Mikdash of above is aligned with the Beis Mikdash of below. That's question one. Diuk one. Beis, it says do a girsa in Rashi. There is a girsa in Rashi. There is a version of Rashi, and the Rebbe writes in the Ara 13, the end of 13, that actually one of my prints, one of my versions of Rashi actually has this following girsa, even though the Chumash that we use does not have the same girsa. So the Mikdash Shel Maila mechuvan keneged Shel Mata, that the Beis Mikdash of above is aligned with what is below. Nit Beis HaMikdash Shel Mata. It omits the word the second time Beis HaMikdash. So farvos is Rashi mashmid legirsa zu divert Beis HaMikdash. So this question is only according to that girsa of Rashi, which in our Chumashim is not written that way, but it is in other Chumashim, including at least in one of the prints that the Rebbe has. Why does Rashi skip the word Beis HaMikdash? Ubifrat is in the Friede Kitzvei sagt Rashi yedem loshem Beis HaMikdash mikdash shel mata. In the other two times that Rashi brought this previously, Rashi does use the word Beis HaMikdash to say that even though, to say that the Beis HaMikdash of above is aligned with the Beis HaMikdash of below. But why is it that in this girsa of this Rashi here, it skips the word Beis HaMikdash and says Shel Mata without saying the word Beis HaMikdash? So very, very quickly. Number one, why does Rashi have to explain anything? Seemingly, it's very clear from the pasuk for whom the Eibush is preparing the place. Number two, why does Rashi elaborate Asher Zimanti Loses Lachem? Why does Rashi use the word Zimanti? Why does Rashi not suffice with the first Pirush? Why does he bring a second Pirush? And why does Rashi add the word V'ze'echad min hamikrois? That this is one of the psukim that there are other, letting us know that there are other psukim that teach us that the Beis Mikdash of above is aligned to the Beis Mikdash of below. And why does Rashi change the order of the Tanchuma to mention the Beis Mikdash of above first? And why in the girsas that omit the word Beis HaMikdash, why does Rashi omit the word Beis HaMikdash? Their beer and them, the beer is as follows. And the Rebbe is going to explain that what's bothering Rashi is not the fact that it says Hachinoisi Stam, and it doesn't tell us for whom the Eibush are prepared. Because as the Rebbe said earlier in the Sikha, that's self-understood. You look in the pasuk, you'll understand who is being prepared for. What's bothering Rashi is something else entirely. And the Rebbe is going to explain that what's bothering Rashi is, what does it mean you prepared? If you say you prepared something, but you didn't do anything to prepare it, you don't see anything different in the thing that's being prepared, then what does the preparation consist of? That's going to be Rashi's question. Where do you see the Hachinoisi? Where do you see this preparation? Rashi comes to address a shaila psuta, a very simple question in the words asher achinoisi, which is why the original dibra maschil is not el hamokoim, but only the words asher achinoisi, because it's the words asher achinoisi that are bothering Rashi. Hachana badaita bestimmte Änderung in the Derzach. Hachana, preparation, means a specific change in something. Was the midvert zimuchan, with which this she becomes prepared, royu muchsha, ready to be used, zu welche mizes mechen, for whatever it is being prepared for. Stellt sich die Shaila benitten die Dans. Over here that we have this very simple question: in was is bastane der Achinese von Eretz Yisrael zu aufnehmen dort die Eden? In what did this preparation consist of, so that it should be able to receive the Jewish people? You don't find anything changed in Eretz Yisrael now compared to its previous state. The Abishai is saying, I prepared this for you. What did he do to prepare it? Where do we see that it's prepared, that it's anything different than it was previously? On the contrary, the Teichen von Hemshich HaParsha is madgish. If you look at the context of the and the flow of this parsha, the Eibush is saying a malach is going to go before you, and he's going to bring you to the Amori, to the Chiti, to the Prizi, to the Knaini, to the Chivi, to the Yevusi, the Yichadativ, and I'm going to banish them. Is madgish these tzukim, and there's more emphasized as the land is noch nit muchen for Yidden, is not yet prepared for the Yidden. In Eretz Yisrael we're still living 7 nations. Medarv ze erst vertreiben von land, they have to be expelled from the land. As darkum in lashon asid vi chadativ agarshenu, various different words for removing them from Eretz Yisrael. Unochmer, as a nit ba'asid hakarev, it's not something that's going to happen very quickly. As ken nit zayin bekarev, it cannot be too quickly, as it says in the psukim that I'm not going to banish them within 1 year, because pentia orit shemama, this might make the land desolate. V'rabu alacha chayes asadan, and these wild animals are going to come into this empty space. Nor dafkin and neifel from ma'at agarshenu. Therefore, the Eibusha says in the pasuk that I'm going to expel them little by little, and that way, ultimately, it'll become your land. But if you look at it right now, the land is filled with 7 nations, and it's going to take quite some time for them to be removed from the land and the Yidden to fully inherit the land. So what does the pasuk mean when it says to bring you to the place that I prepared? How is it prepared? And this is why Rashi comes to explain. It comes to answer, and he says like this: As asher achinoisi da meit nit zugreitung durch a peula ton wie der Teich von achana bekamen bekemes. That Rashi is saying that over here, hachinoisi does not mean to prepare something through an action, that like hachana means in other places. For example, the Rebbe mentions utveach tevach v'hochin. When the brothers came to Yosef, Yosef said to the attendants of his house to prepare a meal. Preparing a meal means to slaughter, to cook, there's actually something happening. Or ve'echinu es asher yaviu, when it's talking about the mon, that they will bring the mon home and they will prepare that which they brought. The Onkelos says v'yetaknun, they'll prepare it, they'll take the mon and they'll cook it, they'll fry it, they'll do something to it. They'll make it ready to eat. So in other places, hachana actually does mean to do an act that changes something in the thing being prepared. Over here, Rashi says that's not what hachana means. No, Rashi zimanti loseis lachem as his blois given hazmona. It was a designation. It was something that Hashem said, I have in mind to give this to the Yidden. Zimanti oich von loshen zimun, einladung. And the word hazmona, which can mean designate, it also comes from the word invite. And einladung means an invitation. When you invite a guest just by invitation alone, doesn't mean you did anything yet to prepare for the guest. It's just you invited him with words. Then, before he gets there, you're going to have to prepare, and so on and so forth. But the word hazmona means to invite. It means to something that was a decision that was made, a designation that was made without necessarily doing anything specific. And similarly, in our case, the Eibishter hat mazmin given Eretz Yisrael. The Eibishter designated Eretz Yisrael for a later time when he will give this land to the Yidden. Zimanti Loseis Lachem. And this in the parentheses as the Rebbe answering this question, why the Arichus, Zimanti Loseis Lachem, which really isn't the question. Because the whole question was on the Mefarshim. Once you answer a different answer, you could say that Rashi has to elaborate. But what is the meaning of the extra words? Zimanti, I prepared it, I designated it in advance, Loseis Lachem, to give to you at a later time. And obviously this also explains why Rashi uses the word zimanti and not hachinoisi, because that's what's bothering the word hachinoisi is bothering Rashi. Rashi says in this case hachinoisi doesn't mean hachana, hachinoisi means hazmana, which means to designate or to invite. So that explains why Rashi has those with seemingly extra words, why Rashi uses the word zimanti, and it explains why Rashi even has to come and tell us anything. Why does Rashi bring a second pirush? So the Rebbe continues. Since, generally speaking, achana does mean a change is made in this thing, and the Ben Chamesh, the student of the Chumash, knows this, either from Veichinus Asher Yavi, which was in Beshalach, or from Utveach Tevach V'Hachin, which is in Miketz. So he already learned what does achana mean. Achana means to prepare something. Therefore, bring Rashi at Sveitin Pirush. The Rashi means the second Pirush from Medrash. Adrash kvar mekoymi nika kenegdei. My place is prepared and designated. Opposite the Beis Hamikdash was laid. Then Pirush hatzechuf ketanachon avachshar in the makim. According to this Pirush, something did happen to the place. This place was prepared for the Eibus's Beis Hamikdash. Nor nit in the makim hamikdash lamata, but where do you see it? Not in the space that's going to become the Beis Hamikdash below. Nor in makim hamikdash maila mekoymi nika kenegdei. So it's taka adrash because it's not below, it's above. But nevertheless, it does answer the question that a shinui, something happened. Something happened. The Eibishter designated his place to be opposite the Beis Hamikdash. Shalmata. This will answer the first diuk that we had in Rashi in Siv Gimel, why Rashi changes from the Tanchuma that mentions the Beis Hamikdash below first, and Rashi mentions the Beis Hamikdash of above first. Nicht in der verkehrten Seite gelassen hat Tanchuma, weil die Pulas Hachana is given in the Mord from Pevik Shal Maila, because the whole question of Rashi is, where did the Hachana happen? And the Hachana in this case happened, the preparation happened in this case in the Beis Hamikdash of above. And therefore Rashi mentioned that first. As mekoymi fun mikdash shel maila is geworden niker connected from the mikdash shel mata. That what was the hachana? What was the preparation that Eibusher is referring to? That he prepared himself a place upstairs in heaven, aligned with the Beis Hamikdash below. So where did it happen? In the Beis Hamikdash of above. And therefore, Rashi changes from the Tanchuma and mentions the Beis Hamikdash of above first, because that's where the change was nikir. That's where there was a recognizable change. Okay. So we had a first shot that there was no change. It was just a designation that had happened earlier. I have a second shot that there was some change. It wasn't something that Yidden could see down here. It was something that happened above. We still have to answer the question why Rashi brings the second part, that there are other psukim, and this is one of those psukim that tell us that the Beis Hamikdash of above is aligned with the Beis Hamikdash of below. And to answer this question, the Rebbe is going to say that we still haven't finalized our answer. Das allein is aber nit maspik. This explanation of the Medrash does not suffice. Weil es ist nicht mistaber zu sagen, das was der Rebbe dort machen, wenn der Makkah Hamikdash shel Maila soll klar nicht haben keine Wirkung auf der Makkah Hamikdash shel Mata. Doesn't make sense to say that the Eibishter prepared a place that was aligned with the Beis Hamikdash of below, and it has no effect on the place below. The Beis Hamikdash shel Mata is aligned directly with the Beis Hamikdash of above. So how could the Eibishter have done something so monumental, and yet we do not see any effect on the space below? As we see in the pasuk by Yankevin, who Rashi brings from Eshton Mola, where Yaakov says this is the gateway to heaven, which is the first time that Rashi gives this explanation that the Beis Hamikdash of above is aligned to the Beis Hamikdash of below. As Yaakov at Marga is going to sumak into the mata. What do we see in those psukim? How did Yaakov say Ein Zakim Beis Elikim V'zeh Shara Shamayim? Because Yaakov felt, he experienced the holiness of that place down below. How awful is this place? Ein zekim beis elikim. This is the house of Hashem. V'zeh shar hashemayim. Clearly, Yaakov was experiencing holiness. And if the pasuk tells us that over here that there was a preparation, something happened above, that the Eibishter's place was designated to be aligned with the Beis Hamikdash of below. It should have had some sort of effect also on the Beis Hamikdash of below, or at least on the space of the Beis Hamikdash below. How does that coincide with what the parsha is saying? How does that fit with what the pasukim tell us, that the place was totally unprepared? It was filled with the other nations. It was totally not prepared. How does that fit? In other words, if something did happen above, it has to have some sort of impact below, and we don't see that impact below. Therefore, Rashi says, 1 second, you will see there is an effect on below, and therefore Rashi brings that this is one of the psukim that tell us that the Beis Hamikdash of above is aligned with the Beis Hamikdash of below. Pasuk meinda nicht zu sagen als it's das gewähne hachana durch dem was Beis Hamikdash von Maila mechuven connected Beis Hamikdash mata. The Torah is not telling us that now the Eibishter made something, the Eibishter did something to align his place with the place of the Beis Hamikdash below. That this preparation or designation, it happened a long time ago. And this is just one pasuk amongst others, some previously mentioned, which tell us the same thing. As shown from früher is Beis Hamikdash shel Maila mechuven connected Beis Hamikdash shel Mata, und der Kvar mekoy minika connected is from früher allemal. In our question, we thought that this something just happened. And we wondered, 1 second, if something just happened, how did it happen just in the heavens above and had no impact on the world below? So Rashi says, this is not something that just happened now. This fact of Hashar Achinoisi, the fact that I designated my place to be aligned with the place of the Beis Hamikdash below, this happened a long time ago. And therefore, even below, there is the possibility to feel holiness. The fact that you're not seeing anything now is because this didn't happen now. Therefore, there's not a question, why don't we see any changes below? Because this whole thing happened a long time ago. So a long time ago there was the Asher Achinoisi, and there was Taka, the Eibishter designated himself a place above. It had an effect on the world below, which is why a person on the caliber of Yaakov Avinu was able to experience holiness in that space. Now the Eibishter is telling them, Asher Achinoisi, this place that a while back I had prepared, this is the place where you're headed now. But now there wasn't going to be any new changes because nothing actually happened now. So this explains, if the person is going to say, you're telling me that the Eibishter moved this place to be aligned with the Beis Hamikdash shel Mata, why don't we feel holiness down below? The answer is, why don't we feel a new holiness below? Of course, a person on the level of Yaakov Avinu does feel holiness below. But why don't we feel anything new, anything different, anything changed? Because this didn't happen now. This happened a long time ago. And now there was one last question, one last diuk in Seif Gimel, which was that in certain Girsoi, certain versions of Rashi, it omits the word Beis Hamikdash. It says the Beis Hamikdash of above is mechuvan, is aligned with that of below, and doesn't say the word Beis Hamikdash. And now it's understood, because we're talking about a space that doesn't feel like a Beis Hamikdash below. It's a place filled with nations and other things like that. And Rashi wants to tell us that even though we don't feel anything, nevertheless something is going on in the spiritual realms. The fact that it says Beis Hamikdash of above is aligned with that of below on the Verter Beis Hamikdash shel Mata without the words Beis Hamikdash. Lahadgish, to emphasize, as the Achon in Makam Hamikdash shel Maila is nicht verbunden mit dem Matzah from Makam Hamikdash shel Mata, that which happens above, the preparation that the Eibishter does above, with his Beis Hamikdash of above, it is not necessarily connected with the state of the space of the Mikdash below. The Beis Hamikdash of Maila is afilu and lamata is netakim Beis Hamikdash. The Beis Hamikdash of above exists even when below there is no Beis Hamikdash. It says mechuve kineged shel mata. It is aligned with that which is above, as felt at Beis Hamikdash. Even if the Beis Hamikdash is missing, Nevertheless, the Beis Hamikdash of above is still aligned with that space. When the fire is considered it was afalpias karmakomi nika kinegdoi von deswegen setzt sich nicht unter lamata kenshuni va'achana, and therefore it's not a contradiction from the fact that despite the fact that the Eibush is preparing himself a place above, you don't see any readiness or any change in the space below. On the contrary, in the space of the Beis Hamikdash of below, the nations are there, which is the opposite of Beis Hamikdash. It's not that's not an issue. I mean, of course it's an issue, but it's not a question, because the Beis Hamikdash of above is aligned with the Beis Hamikdash below, despite the fact that below there's no Beis Hamikdash yet. The two are connected, but they're not interdependent. And with this, we conclude the explanation of Rashi. We answered all of our questions. What's bothering Rashi is what kind of hachana was done here. Answer number one is that it was only a hazmana, it was only a designation, and it wasn't anything more than that. The answer number two is wants to see some sort of change, and the answer and therefore Rashi says that above the Eibishter changed his place to be aligned with the Beis Hamikdash Shalmata, with the place of the Beis Hamikdash below. But if you're going to ask, in that case, why do we see the space below totally unchanged? The answer is because this didn't. There are other psukim that say the same thing, because this didn't happen now. It's happened previously. And Rashi even alludes to this by taking out the word Beis Hamikdash to tell us that despite the fact that there's no change visible, no visible change below, nevertheless there is holiness there. But more than that, the change that happens above is intact, despite the fact that we don't see the change below. In Sivav, the last Sif of the Sikha, the Rebbe is going to teach us a halachic relevance from this Rashi. From the Inyani Halacha was mekan Rishon from the Pirush Rashi, is the Rebbe often said that you can find Yena Shel Torah in Rashi, the wine of Torah, the secrets of Torah, hidden in the Pshat of Rashi, and you can also find ideas, concepts in Halacha that are hidden within the teachings of Rashi. So of course, if you learn the Sikha the way the Mefarshim learned the Sikha, you would not see the following halacha. But once you learn the way the Rebbe learns it, that the question is, was there what does hachana mean, and was there actually a visible change in this thing being prepared or not? It'll actually have a relevance in a halachic concept. Within the opinion of Abaya, that Hazmana Milsa. Let's talk about Hazmana Milsa. Hazmana means you designate something to do something. For example, you take a bag and you designate it to become your tefillin bag, and you put your tefillin in it. So that's called Hazmana Milsa. According to Abaya, the very fact that you decided and used this bag for tefillin makes this a tefillin bag, and it gains a holiness, and now you can't use the bag for mundane things, unless you made it tonight before. I don't want to go into the intricacies of this, but the idea of Hazmana Milsi is that b'shas, when I made a decision and I put my tefillin into this bag, I elevated the holiness of this bag. The question is, what about Hazmana B'dibur? I didn't put my tefillin into the bag yet. I just said, this is this beautiful velvet bag. I am going to use this bag for my tefillin. So there's a machlekes harishonim according to Abaya, which Abaya paskins Hazmana Milsi, that designating something is something. It means it has a validity to give it holiness. What about Hazmana B'dibur? Hazmana B'dibur Milsi Yodernit. If I just said this bag is going to be for the tefillin without actually putting the tefillin into it yet, does that give this bag holiness? And even though we paskin, this actually has a practical application. Even though we paskin like Rava, and Rava holds that Hazmana Lav Milsa, that just by designating it for something itself does not make it holy. There are certain cases where we do take into consideration the Hazmana, the designation of this whatever it is that we're making holy, or that we're using it for. The Gemara over there in Sanhedrin is talking about the burial place, but Abaya holds that Hazmana Milsa. Rava holds Hazmana Lav Milsa. Hazmana by itself means nothing. I mean, just the fact that you planned on using this for this, that doesn't mean anything. So, but there are certain cases, even according to Rava, that Hazmana is Milsa. So therefore, according to Abaya in all cases, and according to Rava in those cases, what happens if the Hazmana was only B'dibur? He said the words, I am going to use this for this. but he didn't yet do anything with it to symbolize this hazmana. So is the dibur enough to make this, to change the status of this thing? But now we could say that this machloikis will depend on the two opinions in Rashi. According to the first pshat of Rashi, the pashta pshat, the simple pshat, the fact that I designated this to give to you without any act of readying it or preparing it, is still referred to in the pasuk as a preparation. Which would imply that just by designating it, just by saying the words milsi, it's something. And that's why you don't need to actually see a pu'ula, an act. The very fact that zimanti is already considered achinoisi. Whereas, according to the Medrash, is there achinoisi verbunden mit anuftu, was is nikir in der Zach? Achinoisi is connected with a change. Something happened, and something that is recognizable. Maybe in this case, down here you didn't see the difference, but above there was something that changed that was nikir, a recognizable difference, albeit above. Which means that you can only say Ashar Achinoisi according to this pshat if there was a change. So in that case, if you just used words and you didn't do an act, then it would not be considered a hazmana, and it wouldn't change the status of it. So this discussion in the Gemara, in the Rishonim, whether hazmana bedibur, whether hazmana through words is hazmana or not, will be consistent with the two pshatim in Rashi. According to the first pshat in Rashi, you do not need an act. Hazmana bedibur is a hazmana, and according to the second pshat in Rashi, you do need an act of some readying, and therefore hazmana bedibur is not considered a hazmana.